Okay. The Lord is good. The Lord is great. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. Glory, glory, glory. There's only one God and one mediator between God and men, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself a ransom for many. To as many as believe. All things are possible. All things are possible to those who believe. If 2 or 3 are gathered in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, and in the name of Jesus, God makes an appearance. Hallelujah. The Lord be praised. So here we are. Here we are at part 5 on the false doctrine in Hebrews. Starting at Hebrews 9:26. It says, "For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world, but now once in the end of the world has he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself." The main reason I put this here is because the writer, the mystery writer, is saying that it's the end of the world, you see? So once again we see, and we're going to continue to see it, we will continue to see it if we go into Revelation, because it's even right to the end of the Bible. But the writer believed it was the end of the world, that Jesus was going to be back, that the world was going to, that Jesus was going to come back, that Jesus was going to come back, and then the world was going to end in some way. But in reality, it wasn't going to end, because there's supposed to be a millennium, 1,000-year reign of Christ, of Jesus the Christ. So we clearly see it was not the end of the world. It's been 2 millennia, almost 2 millennia, since this was written. It's a long, long time. And as far as him putting away sin, he only puts away sin to those who believe in God. The sacrifice of himself, the sacrifice of Jesus, only works to those who seek God, who believe in a God, who believe in a supreme God, who believe in the God of the Bible. Continuing blessing to those who continue to believe in the power of the sacrifice. Because Jesus said salvation is of the Jews. It's not of the Muslims. It's not of the Arabs. It's not of the Hindus. It's not of the current Jews. The Jews, as in Jesus, he was Jewish. Jesus was Jewish. He was half Jewish and half God, and half supreme immortal God. He had the God DNA. He had that mysterious God DNA. So then we have Hebrews 10. Move to Hebrews 10. Move that up. 1 through 4. For the law having a shadow of good things to come. So right away they're demoting the law. They're saying, the law just was a shadow of good things to come. It's not anything good. No, wrong. It's all about good. The law is all about good. It's all about doing good. It's all about the way it's supposed to be. It's all about what God said to do. And not the very image of the things. No, it's the very image of the things, the law. It is the things. And he goes on to say, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. Wrong. It did work on a temporary basis. And perfect, what is perfect anyway? But it did do some perfection in some way, or else he wouldn't have done it. It wasn't a big joke. It wasn't a big charade. It wasn't a big fake. It actually had power. He says, I've given it to you. I've given you the blood of the lambs and the rams and the birds and so forth to make atonement for your soul. The life of the flesh is in the blood. So he gave us that life. It was the life in the blood. So the life in the blood had an effect. It's a spiritual thing. It's not something you can see. It's invisible force. Has to do with the breath, I believe. And then we have, he keeps saying that too. He's going to keep saying that. For then would they have not ceased to be offered? It was a mortal animal, so there was limited power. See, what he's saying there is that if it made the people perfect, then they would have stopped doing them. This is poor reasoning. He says if it made them perfect, then they would just say, well, we're perfect now. I guess we'll just stop. Because that's what that is saying. It's ridiculous. Because he's saying then the worshipers would be cleansed or purged, and they'd have no more conscience, no more conscience of sins, and then they would just be able to stop. And that's ridiculous. But he says, but in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. Well, it is a giving of life from the blood every year, because there was a lack of life. Man has a lack of life. He has no energy source. He's got no source of life. He lacks life. He says, I've given it to you upon the altar to give you life. You know, it's not just a remembrance of sins. It's not just a remembrance of sins. It's an atonement. You know, saying it's just a remembrance again. No, that's nonsense. It sounds like he thought it was a ritual of some type, just some go through the motions ritual. No, there was a giving of life, there was life force released. But it's spiritual, you can't see it, for the most part. And then he says, for it is not possible. No, it is possible. It is possible. Like I say, it wasn't some charade. It wasn't some kind of masquerade that God was doing with that. No, it actually was possible to have sins taken away, in that you receive life. You receive life force, the force of life, of forgiveness. You know, the effects of sin will be removed. Because he says it's not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins. Oh, of course it was. Like I say, it wasn't some kind of fake ceremony. It actually worked. It actually worked. It was possible. It was possible. But it was not eternal. It didn't have an eternal effect. You had to keep doing it. To get the effect, you had to keep doing it. That was the problem. With the blood of Christ, there's no need to continue any more sacrifices. That's why the doctrine of the Catholic Church is so evil, because they think that they sacrifice Jesus. They have to sacrifice Jesus every time they have a meeting. Every time they have a group get-together, which they call a mass. They think they have to sacrifice Jesus afresh so they can get the benefits of it. No, no, no. The benefits are continual. They're somehow continual. It's not completely clear. It has to do with Jesus being the high priest. He has purchased a certain amount of authority. He has the authority to forgive sins by the sacrifice of himself. And he is like the high priest. But he doesn't have to keep sacrificing himself. He somehow purchased that authority, but he had the authority before he even sacrificed. Because remember, he had authority to forgive sins. He said that. He said that before he was offered, before he was sacrificed. He said, to show you that the Son of Man, he called himself the Son of Man, has authority on earth to forgive sins. Pick up your bed and go into your house. Pick up your bed and walk. So what he was saying is that he had authority to forgive sins. That was before he even got sacrificed. That's because God knew that he was going to do it. God was going to make sure that he did it. But then somehow he retains that ability. He retains it. Well, naturally he retains it now that he actually did the substitutionary death. He actually performed it. And so it's a blood covenant. That's what it is. It's all about the blood covenants. That's what God does. He works with blood covenants. But the law remains the same. The law is always the same. It's the same in the New Testament. Even though you don't hear any of the apostles get that, they don't get it for the most part. I mean, they never really totally preach the law, but at least the epistles of John do mention the word commandments quite a bit. Talk about the commandments. He just doesn't really quote them too much. They're not quoted enough. But at least he's talking about commandments. He's saying, you got to keep the commandments. And then we move up a couple of verses. I just skipped 5 for some reason. I'm going to do 6 through 8. And it gets really complicated in here. It gets very fascinating and interesting, you might say. Hebrews 10, 6 through 8. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, you have had no pleasure. What? Oh, that's not true. That all his commandments. This is sounding like the book of Jeremiah. I went over that in my messages on the corrupt Bible translations, how it says in every single version except for the NIV that God never, it's claiming that God never commanded anybody to sacrifice animals. That's basically what it's saying. It's hard to believe, but it's in all the versions. It's saying, I never, it has God speaking, and it says, I never commanded anybody to sacrifice animals. What? We know that's not true. And like I say, the only one that quotes it right, that makes it right, is the NIV. Here again, it's saying the same thing. He's saying he had no pleasure, but it's also saying it was a sweet smell. It was a sweet savor. So he did have pleasure in it, because it was some forgiveness going on there. There was a substitute. There was some justice, substitutionary justice. So this is supposed to be about Christ, supposedly, coming up here. So then it says, but then said I, and this stuff is strange, then said I, lo, or look, I come. And then they put in parentheses, in the volume of the book, it is written of me. Is that right? What book is that? Well, they don't tell you. It says, I come to do your will, O God. And who is speaking here? Well, supposedly, you would think that this is Jesus speaking, that he is going to come and do the will of God. So if we assume that it is, then he is going to have pleasure in sacrifices, because Jesus is going to do a sacrifice. You see? He is going to have pleasure in offerings and sacrifices, since Jesus is going to be the ultimate sacrifice, and somehow or another he's going to be the high priest and intercessor after he's done, after he sheds his eternal blood, which God gave him with the DNA that he had. He had some kind of eternal God blood, some kind of special, he had some kind of special blood. He was born of a virgin. There wasn't a man involved in the male side. And then, let's see what it says next. Above, when he said, sacrifice and offerings and burnt offerings and offering for sin, you would not. No, but he would. He's going to do it. He's going to actually do an offering of himself. He's going to have a sacrifice of himself. Is he? I said, neither had pleasure there. And no, he's going to have pleasure in sending Jesus to the cross. If he wasn't going to have any pleasure at all in the whole thing, he'd just say, I ain't doing it. He wanted to do it. He wanted Jesus to go to the cross and be the Lamb, the eternal Lamb. Let's see, it says, neither had pleasure therein which are offered by the law. Yeah, so that's just saying, again, it's reiterating that it's claiming that somehow God did not have any pleasure in the offerings that were offered in the day of Moses and then afterwards. Well, that's wrong, because if he didn't have any pleasure, he would have ended it. He wouldn't have done it that way. He would have found another way. He wouldn't have gone down the road of animal sacrifice. If he really didn't want to do it, if it was that displeasurable and unpleasant for him, he wouldn't have done it that way. So I wanted to find that in the Old Testament. At first I said, oh, that's not in the Old Testament. So I looked, and there it was. So here it is, Psalm 40, verses 6 through 8. Sacrifice and offering you did not desire. What book are you reading out of? My ears have you opened. Burnt offering and sin offering have you not required. What? And then it says, then said I, the same thing. It says the very same thing. Then said I, lo, I come. In the volume of the book it is written of me. And once again, what book? No clue. What book are you talking about? Because there's no such thing. There's no such book that we have. No book that we have access to. What it really should say is, in the volume of the book it will be written of me. Because it wasn't written at the time. He's talking about that it's already written. It's saying it is written of me. So it really should say, then it would make some sense. You say, I come, in the volume of the book it will be written of me. But then it says, I delight. But then the first verse 6 doesn't make any sense, because he is going to be an offering, a sacrifice and offering. So that's not right. That's not right. It's saying here that it will not be a sacrifice. There is no sacrifice. It's saying as if there is no sacrifice anymore. There's not going to be any sacrifice or offering. Well, that's not true. It was a major offering. What Jesus had to do, it was torture. It wasn't just a quick death. That's the problem. He had to go through quite a bit of long-term suffering, unfortunately. Yeah. But then it says, I delight to do your will, O my God. Yes, your law is within my heart. Yes, your law is within my heart. You see? The law's not dead. The law's not ended. The law's not abolished. The law's not done away with. The law is within his heart. That's the actual law. That's not some other law. That's the law. The law that was given to Moses. That was given through Moses. But like I was saying, you can say that when he said, the volume of the book, it is written of me. It'd be the volume of the Gospels, it will be written of me. Could have said that. They still wouldn't have known what it meant because of that verse 6 saying there would be not going to be any sacrifice. The way that sounds there won't be any sacrifice. It's going to be done some other way. It's just going to be the law. So that's not accurate. If they knew that, maybe they wouldn't have even sacrificed Jesus. If they all believed that there was a man was going to come and he was going to be an offering. But if they believed that, then they would have done it, right? They would have done it anyway. They said, oh, you want to be offered? Well, we'll help you out. If you we don't want to do it, but if you want us to do it, we'll do it. Are you trying to get us to kill you or what? They say, yeah. It's all right, we'll do it. If they had told people, if they had literally, if God had mapped out everything in there, and there will be a God type person, there will be some kind of upgraded, enhanced human being that will be given, great power, and then he'll be an offering, he'll be a sin offering. I wonder what they would have done. Would they have said, okay, here he is, let's do it. Let's get that offering underway. So sorry, Jesus, we got to do it. It says here you're going to be killed. And take care of him. Feed him well. House him well. Take care of him. Until the time, right? Instead, they had no clue. Apparently, they had no clue what was going on. Because they didn't know. They didn't think anybody like Jesus was going to be the end of all the sacrifice. They didn't think that he was somehow going to be a eternal atonement. Another thing, now we got to look at the verse 12 in that same psalm, right? This is another negative thing in a sense, because if this is supposed to be talking about Christ, we have the problem with verse 6. This verse has a problem. Okay? Because they say, well, it's about the sufferings of Jesus, right? Somebody would say, oh, it's about the sufferings of Jesus. But then you look at verse 12, which is only a few verses ahead of that psalm. And it says, move it up, for innumerable evils have compassed me about. Okay, so that would be supposedly Jesus, right? Being sacrificed, and all those people are evils, right? Walking evils. And then it says, my iniquities have taken hold upon me. No, Jesus wasn't dying for his iniquities, see? We don't believe that for a second, that Jesus was dying for his own iniquities. So this is so that I am not able to look up. Well, he was not able to look up too well at that point. I agree with that. Then it says, they are more than the hairs of my head. Well, that's certainly not true. So this person is speaking is talking about his iniquities. And this is, maybe they would claim, I mean, this is supposed to be the sufferings of Jesus. Who else is this? This is obviously just David talking about himself. So you can't use this as an argument that is about Christ. The previous verses, a person is talking as if he has many, many iniquities, not just a few. It says, therefore my heart fails me. Yeah, so that's David. Let's talk about David. It's not talking about Jesus. And then going back to Hebrews 10, where we were, verse 11. And every priest stands daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices which can never take away sins. Wrong. No. Temporarily they are able to relieve the sins of people who were ignorantly sinning, because that is reiterated, or that is stated in the law of Moses, that they were ignorantly sinning. Then they could have an offering. If they were ignorantly breaking the law, then the sacrifices would help them. But if they were deliberately, then apparently the sacrifice wouldn't help. But to say that, they're trying to void out, the writer is trying to void out the entire Old Testament, like it was just a charade of some kind. Like it was all fake, right? They're doing all these offerings and rituals and religious ceremonies, and they were all fake. Because you say to never take away sins, well, why are they doing it then?